The library was quiet, save for the soft rustle of pages and the occasional creak of the building settling into its ancient bones. We had taken refuge in the Gothic University library to cram for finals, an oppressive weight looming over us like the arched ceilings above. The dim lighting and tall shelves lined with forgotten volumes added to the suffocating atmosphere. Marcus had the idea first, of course. He always had a way of suggesting things that teetered on the edge of ridiculous and reckless. "What if we summon some help?" he whispered, leaning closer across the oak table. Ellie rolled her eyes, her bright blonde hair catching the moonlight spilling in from the high windows. "Summon who? Einstein? No, I mean there's got to be something here. Like an old spell or something." "This library's practically a museum," Marcus said, his grin daring us to argue. I should have stopped him, but I was desperate, sleep-deprived and clinging to the edge of sanity after days of endless study. The idea of a magical shortcut didn't seem so absurd. We ventured into the restricted section, a place where legends and ghost stories said knowledge too dangerous for human minds was kept. It was dark and cold, the air heavy with dust. Marcus's flashlight danced over faded spines and crumbling pages until it landed on a book, large than the rest, bound in cracked leather. "Look at this," he said, pulling it down with a grunt. The title was in Latin, its meaning obscured to me, but the aura of the book was unmistakable, ominous, and alive. Flipping through its brittle pages, Ellie found it first, a ritual titled Sapientia Aeterna. "Eternal wisdom," she translated softly, her voice tinged with awe. The instructions were deceptively simple. It required a chant, an offering of ink on parchment, and moonlight in the library's central atrium. It didn't say what would come, only that it would grant knowledge beyond our comprehension. We should have stopped. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to put the book back, to forget about this madness, to study the normal way and accept whatever grade I managed to scrape by. But I was tired. We all were. And that desperation made us reckless. In the atrium, we arranged ourselves in a circle on the marble floor, the moonlight streaming through the stained glass windows above, painting our makeshift altar in shades of blue and red. Marcus read aloud from the tome, his voice quivering as the chant wound its way through the silent library. Ellie and I joined in, our voices low and hesitant. At first, nothing happened. Then the air shifted, growing thick and cold. The faint smell of ink and decay filled my nostrils. The bookshelves lining the atrium shuddered as if a strong wind had blown through, though the air remained still. And then the whispers began. They were faint at first, a soft chorus of unintelligible murmurs. Then they grew louder, closer, the words intertwining into an overwhelming cacophony. I looked at Marcus, whose eyes were wide with fear, and Ellie, clutching her arms as if trying to keep herself together. Suddenly, the books on the shelves began to shake violently before flying off in all directions, pages fluttering like panicked birds. A shadow began to form in the center of our circle, coalescing into a figure. The spirit was translucent, its features sharp and angular, like a sculpture brought to life. Its eyes burned with eerie light, and it wore a tattered robe that seemed to billow despite the lack of wind. "Who dares summon me?" it demanded, its voice reverberating through the atrium. For a moment, none of us could speak. Marcus, the bravest, or perhaps the most foolish, managed to stammer. We need help. Knowledge. For our studies." The spirit's gaze turned to him, and I swear I saw the faintest flicker of amusement in its expression. "Knowledge comes at a price," it intoned. At first, it seemed willing to help, answering our questions with an unsettling precision. Facts and formulas spilled from its lips, knowledge we hadn't yet encountered in our courses, but knew instinctively to be correct. It felt intoxicating, like the answers to all of life's mysteries were within our grasp. But then its tone changed. "You have taken much," it said, its form growing darker, more solid. "Now you must pay." "Pay?" Ellie asked, her voice trembling. "What do you mean?" The spirit's eyes burned brighter, and the temperature in the room plummeted. "Memory is the currency of knowledge. You will pay with yours." I felt an icy tendril wrap around my mind, sifting through my thoughts like pages in a book. Panic surged through me as I realized what it intended to do. Run. I screamed, grabbing Ellie by the arm. We bolted, Marcus following close behind. The spirit's laughter echoed to the library, a sound that made my skin crawl. As we fled, the whispers grew louder, more chaotic, until they were a deafening roar. We burst out of the restricted section, down the grand staircase, and into the night. Only when we reached the safety of the campus quad did we stop, gasping for breath. It wasn't until we tried to recount what had happened that we realized the price we had paid. Our notes were gone, replaced with blank pages. The hours we'd spent studying were erased from our minds. Even simple concepts seemed foreign, as if our knowledge had been siphoned away. The next morning, Ellie noticed the first physical sign of our encounter. My hair, once a deep chestnut brown, had turned stark white overnight. It was a mark of our folly, a warning to anyone who might hear our story. We tried to warn others, but no one believed us. The library was silent as ever, its shelves pristine as if nothing had happened. The only sign of our ordeal was the absence of the dusty tome, which had disappeared without a trace. I can still hear the whispers sometimes, late at night when the world is quiet. They remind me of the danger of shortcuts, the cost of seeking what we are not meant to know. Vacations were always supposed to be a time to escape the chaos of everyday life, to find solace in places where the world seemed quieter. At least, that's what I thought when we packed the car and headed deep into the forest. I was excited, curious about the cabin we'd rented, a remote, rustic retreat surrounded by towering pines. My husband, Tom, was indifferent, more focused on his phone than the trip. Our daughter, Ellie, however, had been bubbling with excitement, her face pressed against the window as we drove further into the woods. The cabin itself was quaint but eerie, nestled among trees so thick they blocked most of the sunlight. It had an age to it, as if it stood there long before the forest swallowed it whole. Inside, the air was damp, and the wooden floors creaked under our steps. On the second night, I found the book. It wasn't on the shelves with the usual forgotten paperbacks or guides to the local trails. No, this book was hidden. I'd been searching the cabinet above the fireplace when I found it wrapped in cloth, its cover brittle and faded with age. Its title was indecipherable, the letters worn away. But inside, the pages were filled with handwritten text and intricate drawings of trees, animals, and strange symbols. I didn't plan to read it first. I truly didn't. But something about the book drew me in. The handwriting seemed alive, the ink flowing like veins across the pages. And then I saw it, a ritual to summon the forest guardian. According to the book, the guardian was a protective spirit, a keeper of balance, who could be invoked for blessings or safety. The words themselves felt ancient, as though they held a power older than time. That night, as we sat by the fireplace, I brought it up. Jane, really? A ritual? Tom had laughed, though the sound was strained. He had never been one for superstition. It's probably just someone's idea of a prank. Ellie, on the other hand, was fascinated. Let's do it, she said, her eyes wide. What's the harm? It sounds fun. I didn't think there'd be any harm. At least, not then. The ritual was simple. We had to draw a circle outside the cabin, using earth and branches from a forest, and chant the words from the book. Ellie loved the idea of sneaking out under the moonlight. Tom grumbled, but eventually joined, dragging his feet as we gathered what we needed. The forest was unervingly quiet as we began. No rustling leaves, no chirping insects, just silence. As we placed the branches and recited the chant, a breeze stirred. At first, it was gentle, almost soothing. But soon, it turned violent, whipping through the trees and carrying with it an unnatural sound, a low, hollow laughter. I thought I imagined it until Ellie screamed. "Something touched me," she cried, her voice trembling. She clung to me, her small hands shaking. "It's just the wind," Tom said, though even he didn't sound convinced. But then we heard it, the laughter again, echoing through the forest. It wasn't human nor animal. It was something else entirely, something that felt wrong. I wanted to stop, but the chant seemed to spill from my lips involuntarily. My voice mingled with Tom's and even Ellie's, as if the words were no longer ours to control. And then it appeared. The figure emerged in the darkness like a flame, glowing faintly against the shadows. Its shape was almost human but elongated, its limbs stretching unnaturally. Its face was obscured, a blur of shifting light and shadow, and its eyes, if you could call them that, were twin orbs of burning green. "You sought me," it said, its voice both melodic and menacing, like the rustle of leaves in a storm. It didn't move closer, yet I felt its presence surrounding us, pressing down on my chest. "We meant no harm," Tom said, stepping forward. His voice wavered, but he stood tall. "We just wanted your blessing. Protection for our family." "Protection?" The Guardian's voice shifted, sharper now. "I protect the forest, not intruders." The wind picked up again, and the trees seemed to close in around us. I grabbed Ellie, pulling her close, as branches snapped and leaves swirled in a frenzy. The figure's glow intensified, casting eerie shadows that danced across the cabin's walls. "You have taken what is not yours," it continued. "Trespassers are offerings." Before I could speak, the ground beneath us trembled. Roots burst from the earth, twisting like serpents. They lashed out, shattering the cabin's windows and splintering the wooden walls. Tom tried to shield us, but a branch struck him, sending him sprawling to the ground. "Run, Ellie." I screamed, pushing her toward the cabin. "Run." But she hesitated, her eyes locked on the figure. "Mom, it's staring at me." I don't remember how I got back inside. The cabin was no longer a haven. It had become a prison. The branches clawed through every opening, trapping us in a cage of twisted wood. Tom was bleeding, his breast shallow as he tried to rise. The Guardian loomed outside, its light flickering like a dying fire. It raised an arm, if you could call it that, and the branches responded, coiling tighter around the cabin. I held Ellie, whispering prayers I didn't even believe in, begging for mercy. But the Guardian was not merciful. "You came uninvited," it said, its voice reverberating through the walls. "You will return what you have taken." "I'll leave. We'll leave," I shouted, tears streaming down my face. "Please, let us go." "Only one may leave," it replied. The branches surged forward, and I lost my grip on Ellie. She screamed, her small form slipping from my grasp as the forest swallowed her whole. I tried to reach her, but the roots held me back, binding me in place. "Ellie," Tom's voice was hoarse, his body limp as he reached for her. But it was too late. She was gone. And then silence. I woke up to the sound of birdsong, the morning light filtering through the shattered remains of the cabin. Tom was beside me, pale and still. His chest no longer rose and fell. Ellie was gone. The book lay open on the floor, its pages blank now, the symbols and words erased as if they'd never existed. But I could still hear the Guardian's voice, its final words etched into my mind. "Trespassers are offerings." I stumbled out of the cabin, my legs weak beneath me. The forest seemed untouched, serene even, as if the horrors of the night before had been nothing more than a dream. But I knew better. The Guardian had taken its price. To this day, I hear her voice in the wind. Ellie calling to me, begging me to come back. And sometimes, I think I just might